All right, welcome back to Mortgage 101, your guide to home ownership with Clinton Wilkins and myself, Todd Veinotte.
And spring is literally around the corner.
Literally around the corner.
Literally.
That's right.
We have our first full day of spring just right upon us.
Do you love spring? Are you a spring guy? You seem to be that guy.
I like spring.
You like any time of year, don't you?
There's things that I like about each season, and there's probably things that I don't like about each season. The only thing I really don't like about summer is it's too fast.
Yeah, it's too fast. And spring can be a little muddy.
Spring can be muddy.
times.
The weather can be problematic, but we can have really good weather in Halifax during the spring period.
Absolutely.
And spring typically is one of the busiest times of the year for me,
Yep.
work-wise.
Yeah.
Traditionally, I should say, where the last, 2 years, 3 years, there's been no real slowdown busy time. It's just been busy all the time.
Right.
There's been no, busy season.
Why spring? When did spring become the busy market for buying a house? Why spring? I don't get that.
I have a sneaking feeling it might have something to do with military relocations.
Oh, is that right?
I think. Now, this is something I can do some research on. I don't want to speak out of school, but I would love to hear if any of our listeners know why the spring market is the busiest real estate market of the year traditionally.
Yeah. Well, I think I have a theory, actually. Well, because people will be looking ahead. They want to get moved for the fall. They don't want to be doing that in the summer. They want to get established, school districts, whatever it might be for their kids.
People want to be in a new home before September.
Before September, that's right. So I think that would be why. In perhaps other impacts like what you discussed as well.
Military
among other
relocations,
things,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think traditionally, winter is the slowest time
Yeah.
because people don't want to move in the winter.
No.
And typically, if a home hasn't sold by the fall, people are reducing their prices.
Right. So there's a fall market.
There's a fall market.
Yeah. Yeah.
Summer sometimes isn't that busy, but sometimes we have a lot of closings in the summer because the transactions that we're working on in the spring fund in the summer.
Right.
Typically, when someone makes an offer, we get an approval, and their rate is good for 120 days. Mm-hmm. So if you're making an offer today, we're closing deals that are maybe funding up to July already. So we have transactions that are already in our pipeline that are funding now in March, April, May, June, and now July. Yeah. We do have transactions that are funding beyond July, but those rates in many cases are not set yet. We'll set them 120 days before funding. Yeah. So typically when you're making an offer, it's not longer than 120 days from the time the offer goes in.
So what advice do you give people when they're heading into a spring market? Because obviously there's going to be a lot of competition out there when it comes to bidding. So they want to be prepared as possible to get their home and fulfill their dreams. Mm-hmm. So what advice from a mortgage broker rather, do you give them?
I think definitely get pre-approved. Don't change your income. Don't change your credit. Don't change your assets. Improve it. Improving it is okay.
Yeah.
But don't make material changes because that can really negatively impact your pre-approval.
Yeah, such as buying a car or something like that.
Don't buy a car.
Yeah.
Don't change your job and then you're going to be on probation or go into a worse position credit-wise. Right. Make all your payments. Yeah. Monitor your credit.
Right.
That's really important.
Yeah.
The other thing is get a really good, solid pre-approval.
Right.
From someone that you can fulfill the mortgage financing with. Some pre-approvals are a rate hold. Some pre-approvals are underwritten at that time. I think know that your pre-approval is good. Mm-hmm. And people are asking more and more not to put in a financing condition when they make an offer. When the market was really super, super hot, we were seeing that a lot.
Yeah.
The one concern that I have is around valuation. So if you're buying a property and, you're putting down 5%, the high ratio mortgage insurer, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Sagen or Canada Guarantee, needs to support that property value. Mm-hmm. If you're putting down 20% or more, typically you need an appraisal of the property, or the property has to pass through an automatic valuation system. Because the market's kind of been all over the place right now, we're coming off a very wild time in terms of real estate, and now there's not as many transactions happening. There might not be as many comparable sales.
Right.
So my theory is, if you have a very good pre-approval, maybe you make an offer, and instead of putting a financing condition, maybe you put a special condition to say appraisal to be completed by this date, and the value is supported.
Yeah. So when you do have a pre-approval, that's from one lender, is it? Is that generally how you do it?
Typically, it's from one lender.
From one lender, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no pre-approval that might kind of canvas more than one lender then?
Well, the only way you would do that is to have several pre-approvals.
Right.
And that kind of it works against the theory of, hey, you're pre-approved here.
Right.
Because that lender is basically, parking that money.
Yeah, that's exactly.
You're
right.
pre-approved,
Yeah.
and they're holding this money at this rate.
Yeah, and they're holding the rate, right? The rate, that's important.
The interesting thing with a pre-approval, and consumers ask me all the time, what happens if the rates go down
Mm-hmm.
between the time you get your pre-approval and the time that you make an offer? We always give the consumer the lower rate.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
And once you even get an approval, and if the rates go down, we oftentimes can even float down the rate without even needing to go back through and getting new documents signed.
Yeah.
We'll just send the revised documents to the lawyer, and you can get them signed there. So for us, we don't get paid on rate.
Right.
It's different with the bank and the branches. The branches, they're paid on margin. How much money can they make off that mortgage during this period of time? We are paid on volume. So if you take a bigger mortgage, that means I get paid more.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm more motivated to lend you more money,
Yeah.
and I don't get paid unless I lend people money. So I have a vested interest that way, but it's not in the rate. So we always want to give the consumer the best rate that we can.
Right.
Are we always the lowest, Todd? I don't think so. There are some discount brokerages out there. Typically, they're more online or over a call center.
Right.
We consider ourselves a full-service mortgage brokerage. I believe that we provide a very fair rate, and I think that we are one of the lower in the marketplace. But I won't say that we're the absolute lowest every single time. And in some ways, you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So explain, get what you pay for more. Drill down more into that.
Well, I think in terms of what we do with full service, we have 2 brick and mortar locations. We'll call them branches.
Yes.
And that's somewhat unusual in this mortgage lending industry. A lot of mortgage brokers are working at home
Yep.
or maybe out of coffee shops, stuff like that. I'm not saying they all do, but that's kind of the traditional, work model. And that's very similar for people that work in the insurance industry, any type of career sales. You don't typically work from an office,
Right.
typically.
And you guys answer the phone.
And we answer the phone.
Yeah.
So we have 2 people who answer the phone every day. We have a huge, I'll call it like a workforce of people that want to ensure that you're being taken care of. It's not just me, but I do see clients every day.
Right.
But there's 4 other mortgage brokers that we have in our office. We have a business manager. We have, people that collect the documents and order appraisals. So we do have a well-oiled machine,
Yeah.
which I think sometimes catches clients off guard. I've received, emails back to be like, oh, I only, put in a request on your website a minute ago and you're already getting back to us.
Yeah.
Well, we're that on it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Canada Post.
Yeah.
You have to keep the mail going because otherwise it starts piling up.
Right.
And we really pride ourselves in providing like the really good advice and service.
Right.
And I think that really differentiates us.
So the bottom line is have a pre-approval if you're going to go out there.
Get a pre-approval
make sure you
from
have that
someone
done.
that you trust.
Yeah.
And know that pre-approval is going to be solid.
Yeah.
Sometimes they fall apart, Todd.
Yeah. The
Sometimes
pre-approval does.
they fall apart.
Yeah.
And guess what? People call us and we pick up the pieces. But don't call us when it falls apart.
Why does it fall apart? Why does a pre-approval fall apart?
I think maybe they hadn't verified income, or they
I
hadn't
see.
verified credit, or they haven't verified.
So that's not the underwriting
assets.
process that's been done at that point, right? So you're
Maybe it
relying
wasn't-
you're relying on the client to tell you the right
Maybe it
information.
wasn't fully underwritten. For us, we
Right.
get a lot of documents up front.
Right. Yeah.
So we do
Right.
more verification probably than most
Than
do.
most do, yeah. Yeah. Because when
It
you
just
have
makes the process easier.
makes it easier. But in the end, you're going to need it anyway.
You're going to need it, and you might as well know where you stand.
Yeah.
Buying a home is the biggest purchase of your life, and the mortgage is the biggest debt. I say this over and over. Like it almost sounds like I sound like a broken record, but it really is. And you want to make sure the process is going to be smooth. Because if it's not smooth, guess what? You have a lot of other stresses that are not just the mortgage.
Right.
Especially when you're buying a home. You have inspections. You're dealing with a realtor. You're dealing with a lawyer. You're dealing with insurance.
Yeah.
There's lots of nuances, so you really need to know that the financing is going to work out.
Yeah. All right, we got a couple of segments left. What do you want to get to next, Clinton? What do you think people really need to know about?
Well, I think they really need to know like what's going on here in the real estate market in Halifax.
Yep.
I certainly want to touch on that. And I want to touch on really where are things sitting with rates.
Okay, Mortgage 101, your guide to homeownership. We'll be right back.
If you've liked what you've heard and you want to learn more, feel free to visit us online at teamclinton.ca.